Something that I like about consuming media of any kind is its ability to get you to think. From the most highbrow explorations of philosophical and intellectual topics to the lowest of the lowbrow content where you are metaphorically rolling around in the muck that is cat compilations. No matter what it is, I love how experiences have the ability to trigger thoughts. If you've watched any of my videos before, you will know that I play a lot of mmorpgs. And recently, while visiting the auction house in World Classic, I began to muse upon the topic of the in-game economy, which then made me think about our own economy, and aside from it being very depressing, an idea started to bake in my mind oven. What could this online economy teach us about our own? So let's find out. So what is an economy? An economy is the area of production, distribution and trade, as well as the consumption of goods and services in society, particularly the practices, discourses and material expressions associated with the production, use and management of resources. Fucking hell. Now those are a lot of long fancy pants words, but essentially it is about money and how it is used and created and everything in between. The word economy is derived from Middle French's economie, which itself is derived from the medieval Latin's economia. The Latin word has its origin at the ancient Greek's oikonomia or oikonomos. The word's first part, oikos, meaning house, and the second part, mnemonian, means to manage. The first notion of something like an economy was probably in the hunter-gatherer period of our existence, in the collection and management of resources. But the first modern economy was potentially in the Netherlands during the golden era in the 17th century. I say possibly because apparently historians argue about it according to the internet. I wonder what that looked like. Anyway. How does an MMO economy work? An MMO economy relies on a sort of central system that is set up to continually distribute and then return, in a sense, in-game currency. In an MMO economy, currency sort of comes from the ether and then returns to it. Amen. This is achieved through what is referred to as taps and sinks. Taps give currency and sinks remove currency in order to keep things moving. The taps are what allows currency into the economy, and that takes the form of the rewards you get from completing quests or killing monsters. So that can be gold pieces in most cases, or gear that you can then sell on to vendors to get gold pieces. In an MMO, this currency isn't distributed from one central place, but in most cases literally just pop into existence all over the game. Every time an enemy spawns, that is essentially currency being created. So if that is broadly how money enters the MMO economy, how is it removed? Methods like bind on equip, meaning the armour or weapon has no resale value once you have put it on, having to pay a nominal fee to repair your gear as it encounters wear and tear, fees paid on items you list on the auction house when you sell something, paying for fast travel, all ensure that money that you earn when playing the game is returned to where it came from. You can accumulate your own wealth from private sales of loot you find, moving money between players, but eventually that money will be spent, and in the case of MMOs, destroyed and therefore removed from the economy. The best items with the most effective stats and attributes naturally find their relative worth. Higher cost items can only be afforded by richer players, which ensures money comes back or moves to someone else and creates an incentive to spend money you have. Your gold pieces don't really have any value just sitting in your account as a number. It is when you get that badass sword that does 11 billion damage per second that it is worth something. The objective here is to ensure that money doesn't just accumulate forever, hence the sink analogy, as it is slowly draining away. Having that steady trickle stops the sink from running over, just to keep the analogy flowing, pun intended. RuneScape has a literal gold sink that you can craft for over 100 million gold, which you can put in your player house. Classic. Never change, RuneScape. Never change. I don't actually play RuneScape, it sort of does my nut in, but it sounds like something they would do. So how does our economy work? I will just say right up front that obviously a real-life economy has a lot more complexities that I won't go into here, but I am dealing with the basics such as they are, and I invite people to discuss this topic, with the strong emphasis on the word discuss here, as in cordially and respectfully, in the comments below. Anyway, the creation of money is complex, what with central and commercial banks, loans and reserves, creating money for mortgages, buying state bonds and quantitative easing, and a load of other big brain stuff that I am not qualified to talk about. But on a very simple level, our economy works in a similar way to the MMO economy, with just some differences in terms of how money is distributed and then collected. When the government or central bank through the government creates money, it isn't created or destroyed in the same way as in MMOs, so it needs to be sort of reclaimed, circulated and then be distributed again. The circle of life, sort of. They work on similar basic principles, but the main thing is the concept of circulation. The difference being that an MMO economy imitates circulation via the mechanism of continually putting money into and taking it out of the world or economy through the process of creation and destruction. In the real world, we need the money to come back to a sort of central point and then be recirculated back into the economy, which is why we need our own system of sinks in the form of taxes. Income tax, council tax, national insurance, business tax. Taxes act in the same way as the sinks taking a portion of the money back, as it were. So both types of economies have different problems to deal with, but share some fundamental ones. So, what are the problems to avoid? You need a way of recovering the money through sinks or taxes so as not to devalue the currency, because if you devalue the currency, you risk triggering hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is, well, as it sounds really, when inflation happens incredibly fast and prices rise. It causes a loss of confidence in the currency and a potential collapse of the monetary system, and ultimately could lead to social and political instability. Examples of real-life hyperinflation include the old Weimar Republic, where rapid price increases were triggered by the printing of vast quantities of money in order to deal with the economic instability of the post-war period. This meant absolutely mental price increases where over a period of 10 months a loaf of bread went from 250 marks to an insane 200 million marks. Hungary recorded the highest hyperinflation in history in 1946, with prices doubling every 15 hours, and the inflation rate reached an absolutely berserk 41.9 quadrillion %. This was again as a result of a post-war shock to the economy, including the payment of reparations among other things. Yugoslavia, Zimbabwe, Venezuela are all other famous historic examples of hyperinflation hit economies. Most come as a result of war or shock to an already weak economy. Other problems to contend with might be a recession or unemployment. Sometimes these are inflicted upon an economy from external factors outside of its control, like natural disasters and such, but a key rule is to try and operate with a balance. Remember that for later. As far as MMO economies go, they also have to worry about hyperinflation, but also other stuff that can unbalance things. Black markets selling in-game gold, sometimes the introduction of a cash shop, or too many items introduced at once, devaluing other items in the game. Once again, it is all about balance. So let's talk briefly about the principles of designing an MMO economy. As I just mentioned, a key principle when designing a game economy is balance. Balancing the inflation and deflation of the economy, performing continuous tweaks and amendments, and try not to go too far in any one direction. The release of too many cosmetics or too many updates can lead to inflation, altering items' perceived worth, or limiting the release of premium items, creating deflation, boosting item value through rarity. You also have to think about the fact that you want to encourage player participation so as not to turn people off your game. especially for an MMO, as you need to keep your player numbers up lest you fade into obscurity. In a 2017 GDC talk on designing the Albion online economy, Matt Woodward, senior designer at Sandbox Interactive, talks about creating intrinsic motivators to keep players engaged with the game and its economy. Intrinsic motivators are internal drivers that prompt you to engage in an activity purely for the joy and personal fulfillment of taking part. An extrinsic motivator would be something like participating only to get the trophy at the end of it, rather than the participation itself. Sounds a bit like employment, really, doesn't it? So while obviously the economy isn't the only thing that is going to keep players playing the game, arguably the game has to be good, but the economy shouldn't act as a blocker. It has to try and create an economy in order to reduce grind and friction, making players feel like they are getting stuff out of it and improving. People need to feel like they have the same opportunity to invest time and achieve as anyone else. If an MMO economy fails and plays a part in driving players away, then those players will just leave and go somewhere else. Not exactly something that people can do in the real world. If we become disenfranchised in the real world, what happens next? I know a lot of people will have attitudes of, well, if you don't like it, why don't you go somewhere else? But the reality is likely to be something way more serious and probably doesn't bear thinking about for the sake of your mental health. So what lessons can we learn? Obviously, like I have already said, MMO economies are not like real-life economies for a lot of reasons, but what lessons can we learn from them about our own economies and our attitudes towards them? I think the key lesson I take away from all this, when I think about it, is the concept of balance and how we intrinsically accept and encourage balance and fairness when designing these video game economies. Players have gone berserk over much less, demanding that devs take action and right wrongs. So why do we accept imbalance in our own economies? The devs try to balance the game economy to avoid newer players, or for want of a better word, poorer players, being frozen out, as they want them to keep participating within the economy and the game itself. The way it is set up means that if some players have more, it doesn't matter because people still have enough. Everyone's needs are met. There is a floor and you can't fall below that, no matter who you are. Because it is designed on the principle of fairness, you have equal opportunity to build up your wealth and buy the mega sword or whatever. And if we're talking about fairness, let's talk about pay to win. Because if there is one thing that will make most MMO player bases lose their shit, it is pay to win, and rightly so. Pay to win instantly feels unfair to people, save for those with the resources to be able to participate in it. Because pay to win exists in real life economies too. In an MMO, maybe pay to win means that some arsehole can just batter you with the best gear or gain access to certain advantages or whatever, but it isn't really that far away from real life, where those with the resources to do so can shape and influence the world at the expense of those around them. And just like in the game world, they won't complain because it is benefiting them. But again, we don't like or generally accept that shit in a video game, so why do we accept it in real life? Pay to win in real life is rich people buying up all the houses and then squeezing you for ever increasing rents. Hoarding wealth and passing it down, creating bigger and bigger divides in society, destroying any sense of balance. But unlike actual economies, MMORPGs do not really promote hoarding wealth. What are you saving it for? Your living costs, such as they are, food for buffs, etc., are minimal in terms of a percentage of your earnings, and any maintenance fees for yourself and guild are well and truly covered, so those who amass massive wealth will spend it and therefore sink it and remove it from the economy. Either on the best gear, providing gear and consumables for your guild, or engaging in the time-honoured tradition of the real endgame of any MMO, which is buying jazzy outfits so your drip is on point. You are limited to how you can assert that wealth in the game. In most games, you can't spend your money in such a way as to literally hold someone down like the rich can in our society. where someone is stuck in a low-paid job that they can't afford to stop working to retrain or make their own progress, and is held in place by ever-increasing rents visited upon them by the greed of others. So you can be a creepy little capitalist greed hog in an MMO, but unlike in real life, there is a baseline where everyone starts from, and that can't be lowered. Unless we are playing a game like Rust or something else where it is full loot PvP and you can literally just beat me up and take my shit, it is technically possible for me to pull myself up by my bootstraps, as it were, which in reality is a strange and quite stupid saying which has been warped to take it away from its original meaning. It is quite literally an impossible thing to do. Go on, have a go and see how far you get. Reach down and start yanking on your shoelaces. Yeah. Not very far. Dare I say, there is a sort of social safety net in these online games where no matter what class or race, no matter where you spawn in the world, you have the same opportunity as anyone else. You need only give your time. The closest thing I can think of that I have experienced in a game to our economy is turning up late to a server in Ark and spawning into the world for the first time only for the frame rate to go through the floor because some Neolithic space chads have built an entire fucking empire on the starting area. And there I am, punching a sodding tree to make an axe to chop wood etc. in my furry pants, and then someone rides over on a T-Rex and eats me. But even in the completely brutal and arsehole world of full loot survival games, there are still regular server wipes to reset everyone's progress. Why? Because of the perceived and very real importance of balance and fairness. Perhaps EVE Online is a game that isn't so worried about balance and is more of a perfect model of uninhibited hyper-capitalism running wild, and that is fine if people like such a brutal environment to play in. But I think we should limit those types of environments to pretty space trading sims rather than allow them to dominate in the real world. And it is my understanding that even in EVE, player-run guilds sort of end up getting so big they essentially act like nation states that start setting up their own social security systems. And no, I don't think that is a good example for making an argument that private enterprise and the free market will free us all, but that is a conversation for another time. There are other challenges like the fact that in real life, rich people can take their money out of the economy altogether through offshore banks and avoid the sinks that we set up. But current day argument, hoarding of wealth and then the wealthy buying up all the assets and causing massive wealth disparity seems to be the most pressing issue. I think our biggest problem is that we have been taught that the economy in real life runs like a household budget, which it doesn't. Which makes it very hard to put forward or argue the case for change because to most people it kind of makes sense to them, especially when we think back to the etymology of the word economy. My most charitable explanation for this is like how we teach people about complex scientific theories. We deliver a sort of slightly dumbed down version first to help grasp the fundamentals, and then if someone shows further interest they will learn a more in-depth and full explanation. But in the case of money and the economy, it may also be a good way of distracting you from where your money is really going. And I deliberately use the term your money to make a point because I think that is another mistake and misunderstanding we make, that any of it is in fact our money. Richard Murphy, former chartered accountant and professor of accounting, says the following in his video titled "Why Running a Country Isn't Like Running a Household." I'll link it down below and you should watch it for a more full explanation. But a household has to earn before it can spend. It cannot create money, it cannot tax or set interest rates on its saved money, whereas a government can because it has its own central bank. It can always extend its credit so it can't run out. Furthermore, it can tax its citizens to get some back. The government is a rule maker and a household is a rule taker. It essentially decides all the rules of the economy and how they wish to balance it. And as I have said before, balance is the key thing. He also asserts that this household analogy rhetoric trick is a tool that allows the government to essentially shrink the state, cutting social and public services. As he neatly puts it, the government wants to make you a passive consumer in the economy rather than an active participant. So if we think back to how an MMO economy might be designed by the developers, that is actually a pretty good parallel for our own economy, i.e. it is made up. It is a system designed to keep money moving round and round. But unlike an MMO economy, where they have tried to operate under the principle of balance, it seems to have been deliberately designed to benefit certain people. Either that, or it has been steered and weighed towards those people over time by the people it does benefit. So if the system is designed, that means we can change it. Of course, it is complicated. The systems of trade and currency creation do work and are very handy for running a society, but they don't have to be that way. And there are many intelligent people who can manage that economy, patch it, upgrade it, balance it. Just like a marine fish tank, you have to constantly adjust the temperature, the pH levels, the salt content, in order to ensure that the fish within the tank thrive. And we are the fish. So again, I'll just say, why do we not accept it in our video game economies, but stay silent in our real life economies? And also ask yourself, who decided it should be this way in the first place, and why are they so important? Of course, there is no perfect solution. It is an ongoing process that has to be continually maintained, just like the fish tank analogy. But there are some ideas on how to rebalance it. So what are some solutions? So there are two ideas I want to talk about here. One is on people hoarding wealth, and the other is about inequality and the gap between the rich and the poor. Both are obviously very closely linked, but there are solutions from Gary Stevenson, former city trader and now decorated author and YouTuber, that I would like to mention. If we cast our minds back and think about the MMORPGs trying to create incentives to spend, how can we do something similar in our economy? One problem is generational wealth, where the rich just keep handing wealth down and accumulating more and more. The money stays within one family and isn't distributed back into the economy. One idea Gary spoke about in the past designed to address generational wealth is to set a time limit on wealth so that you need to spend it. So if you are passing down wealth created, you and your family may have a 100 or 150 year limit when you have to spend that money by, or it is taken back, thus putting the brakes on hoarding of generational wealth. So in the example of buying the super duper mega awesome sword in an MMO, if you know you can't take it with you, for want of a better phrase, then you are incentivized to just spend it. This one probably takes a bit of getting to grips with, because I think a lot of people will naturally think that they have worked hard for that money and they want to hand it down to their kids and all of that. But what I would say to that is, that way of thinking only makes sense in this individualistic, uncaring capitalist system we live in. If we made a more equitable society, where the economy was driven by the needs of the people, providing a welfare state that ensures that everyone is comfortable and taken care of because we care about our fellow human beings, then maybe you wouldn't feel so worried about needing to leave money behind in the first place, because you would know that no matter what, your children will be taken care of by the society we have built for them, and their children after that. Secondly, as I said earlier, is it even really your money anyway? The other idea of Gary's that is gaining a lot of traction at the moment is the concept of taxing wealth, not wages. This is a way to redress where the economy is now with massive wealth inequality. Essentially, the super rich, those that are hoarding all the money and buying all the assets, have found ways to avoid the sinks, and we need to take a bit off them. Once upon a time, maybe that would have affected more people, like high earners, but shit has gotten so bad and the distance between the rich and the poor has widened so much that just adding a bit of tax to high earners wouldn't be enough anymore. Besides, that isn't where the money is. The money is with those that don't necessarily earn money but accrue interest on vast amounts of money they already have. Money that doesn't get taxed. The Green Party in the UK have floated a wealth tax of 1% on estates over 10 million. 10 fucking million. I know some of you may be thinking something fanciful like, I might have 10 million in assets one day. And yeah, maybe, but I wonder what odds a bookie would give you on that coming true. The truth of the matter is that even if we took a small amount of money from these people, they would still be insanely rich. We have effectively been running an experiment on society on a global scale now for some time, and what we have found out is there is plenty of money kicking about and enough headroom that we could lift everyone's living standards and some people would still be able to shit in golden toilets. Or Jeff Bezos could pay all of his delivery drivers 40, maybe even 60k a year and would still have so much money in his company that he could hire whole cities for his wedding or parties and no one would ever have to piss in a fucking bottle again for fear of not making enough deliveries on time. Obviously, I would tell you that the problem is capitalism, and obviously I think I am right. But I am not here to make this argument or convince you otherwise. I don't even want to convince you that we should go all anarchist and change shit up drastically. I just want people to consider as a starting point, why can't we have something like what we have, but a little fairer and a little bit more for the people, those that actually make society tick. And this isn't just commie bullshit. Even under more socialist systems, we would still have markets and trading and people could still make plenty of money and have more than other people if they wanted that and if they put the work in. Yeah, socialism is gay and all that, but let's be honest with ourselves. We can't keep going the way we're going, and you don't need to be a gay socialist to know that. So it may feel futile and is going to be hard because everything is stacked in favour of those with all the money, those that don't want the system to change, but something has to change. So just like in our MMOs, demand fairness, demand balance. Check out Gary's channel linked below and tax wealth not wages. Let's get some more sinks in this game of life. Thanks for watching.